¿Cómo se podría explicar que las milenarias imágenes sumerias que muestran a los dioses Anunnaki llevando un misterioso bolso también están en el otro lado del mundo, representados por las antiguas civilizaciones mesoamericanas? ¿Qué es ese misterioso bolso de los dioses? Los antiguos sumerios representaban los antiguos Anunnaki con elementos curiosos. Dos de los objetos más interesantes vistos en las antiguas deidades sumerias eran el reloj de mano, visto en casi todas las representaciones, y el misterioso bolso llevado por los dioses. Ahora veamos qué es lo que dice John Vivanco, un visor remoto, sobre estos elementos tan misteriosos.
You examine these pictographs of the Anunnaki carrying these seed bags.
The bags. So yeah,
tell us about that.
Yeah. So there's always been a question as to what that bag is about, that and the low relief glyphs that the Anunnaki is carrying. So when we task, I know I've tasked on it a number of times. I've also used it just for like regular student taskings, right? Not just professionals, but the people I teach. And so, I've probably tasked on this. I probably tasked on it 20, 30 times, something like that, because I'll just send it out as a practice target. And it always comes back as the representation of the bag that carries civilizations in it. So that bag is the representation of the seeds that these beings carry from planet to planet. Ultimately, that's what it is. It's actually quite simple too.
Right. Now, with that particular pictograph, I mean, the Anunnaki, which I believe is Enki, is also in his right hand carrying an Acorn, which represents, I guess, the third eye.
The third eye, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess, and there's a kind of debate out there, about, well, was Enki, like, there seems to be this sibling rivalry between Enki and Enlil. Enki was the geneticist. Enlil was the space commander. Enlil bad, he caused the catastrophes. Enki good, because he was helping seed humanity and genetically upgrading them and all of that. So, yeah, what do you know about the Acorn, Enki, and his role in kind of like seeding humanity?
So when we look at the acorn has to do with what you said, the third eye, but more the third eye would be a metaphorical representation of the spiritual growth of the civilization. So ultimately their intention is the spiritual growth, at least in these glyphs, in these low reliefs, is the spiritual development of the civilization to open their third eye, ultimately, is what it means. When you get to the conflict between the two, so we've seen this in remote viewing data where there was a conflict between the two, and I don't remember like which one was more benevolent than the other one, but one was definitely on the side of wanting to create sort of a slavery type situation, and one of them was more on the side of wanting the third eye type situation, the race to ultimately enlighten, to understand what they truly are. But I don't remember which one was which, but that it shows up in remote viewing data, always shows up in remote viewing data.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's confirmation then that Enki was the one that was really involved in the kind of like the enlightenment of humanity, and the Acorn, the pineal gland. So he's generally regarded as the positive, the benevolent Anunnaki Lord or God, whereas there are a few who say that, and it was Enlil, and they kind of associate him more with this kind of Yahweh, God of thunder and justice and vengeful behavior if you don't do what's you're supposed to do. Like Yahweh.
I mean, the Yahweh is a very interesting being, and we actually do have a lot of crossover when we look at Yahweh with other more wrathful type beings. I'm kind of like coming to the conclusion with Yahweh, the Enki, Enlil characters, as well as the other mythological type gods, that they weren't mythological. There's a reality, a physical reality to them, and a lot of them are sort of an amalgamation of each other, or they are an aspect of the character of that particular god, right? And so what we find that, like with Yahweh, for instance, when we look into that being, we can also look at another being where viewers will talk about, and I can't remember which one. I wish I had this on hand here, but I can't remember which one. Where viewers will say maybe it's like one of the Norwegian gods, where that's another aspect of that particular god. It's like a personality side or an aspect side, or a fractal, or it's just it doing something different, right? Odin, for instance. Some of the Japanese gods as well. We will have this relationship in the data between Yahweh, and that was the Japanese interpretation of this particular being, right? So it's really interesting how all these things cross over. It's like comparative history or comparative mythology, where different cultures had an experience with one being, and they portrayed it in these different ways, and it would act in different ways towards each different culture.
You also analyze one of the glyphs featuring Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, and there again we see the
another aspect of Yahweh. That's actually something that would show up in the data, would be this other aspect of Yahweh. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So there you have that glyph. You have the cedar bag, what seems to be like an astronaut in a craft, and then you have a dragon. So right. Yeah, you want to unpack that for us?
Well, interestingly enough, there have been a lot of people out there who have scholars, like biblical scholars and other people, have gone, wow, a lot of the descriptions of Yahweh seems very dragon-like, where there are some descriptions of Yahweh as being a dragon. And if you go back to Mount Sinai and what people around there used to worship before Moses was they worshipped a dragon god or a volcano god, and that god later turned into Yahweh, right? And so we find this as well with other glyphs, like what you're seeing here right now of a dragon, and when we remote view it, it's got the aspects of Yahweh to it, right? And it's got the seed bag, and also it's either Enlil or Enki, who is also related to the Yahweh construct or the Yahweh character. So this is all the same thing, and all this stuff came about at a time when the earth was being reseeded, basically when it was being reseeded. So
it truly is fascinating. Now the Enlil is the one that is typically associated with the Yahweh character, and I believe he had his own separate genetic program, because once he figured out that his half-brother or Enki was trying to come up with this more evolved human, that Enlil wanted the slave version, so he got his own geneticist to kind of like, so you almost have like two strands of genetic experiments happening there.
Right. Right.
So you have also the generally speaking, the gods are creating these seeders are creating these genetic experiments all over the planet.
Yeah.
And so, as they travel to different parts of the planet, whether it's Japan, China, the Americas, Europe, Australia, I mean, what kind of different genetics were they carrying?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of different genetics they were carrying, but I do know that there was a focus to create different characteristics within different areas of the planet, because of the idea that if you had a planet with really just one race, things will get pretty boring genetically. But if you mix things between continents with very specific genetic structures, when these people find each other and they start to make babies, you get other things going on. So what you also have here in part is this sort of evolutionary experiment where you have aspects of different genetics and cultures across the universe that are placed into different races on this planet. And the whole intention is to create this situation where you see what new things can be created when you put them together. It's all a work of art. It's all a creative expression. And that is in part also what they meant for this, meant about it.